Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Tompkison. I am a social worker on the hub team for Geri Echo. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the other hub team members that are here with us today. We have Dr. Lucas Morgan, our psychologist, along with Dr. Reese Ueno, and I believe Dr. Courtney Nunu Kawa will be joining us shortly. So please, as a reminder, for this particular session, we are not offering CMEs, but in the future, all of your other evaluations for CMEs should be submitted in the link if you want to get continuing education. Um, So just a little bit about Echo, Geri Echo. We want to emphasize again that this webinar serves as a forum for mutual teaching and learning from experts and from each of us on the front lines. As the Echo motto goes, all teach, all learn. And in the spirit of aloha, we want to encourage you to turn on your cameras to help us build a community of learning. But feel free to eat lunch during the session because good nutrition is key to a healthy lifestyle. Uh, Again, our Echo webinar format consists of a short lecture from our expert presenter today, followed by open comments from the expertise of the Echo Hub team, and you, the attendees. We encourage your questions, your comments, and even examples of situations that you can certainly enter in the chat. Additionally, we want to invite you to share any geriatric cases. And lastly, we ask that you please keep discussions HIPAA compliant. This includes not sharing the patient's name, the birth date, address, and so on. Again, we learn best from our patients and our clients. They are our best teachers. Today, I'm privileged to be able to introduce our speaker, Mr. Mike O'Malley. He's a seasoned expert in the durable medical equipment industry with more than 15 years experience. Presently, Mike is the branch manager for GAMI Home Care on Oahu, and he oversees the entire DME operation and specializes in rehab solutions to ensure the best possible care for clients. His background includes managing DME operations across multiple states and collaboration with major hospital systems and leading teams of assistive technology professionals. Wow, that's a mouthful. With certifications from all major power mobility providers, Mike's expertise is in alternative drive systems, which I'm sure we're all looking forward to hearing what that's about. Mike is dedicated to advancing patient care. He has a deep knowledge of insurance reimbursement, product availability, and some of the many patient care challenges. And this makes him a trusted leader in the field. So please join me in welcoming Mike O'Malley.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Mike O'Malley. I am the branch manager of GAMI Home Care Oahu, and today we're going to be talking about power rehab solutions for your clients. I know that with power rehab solutions, there's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of bad information. There's a lot of myths and other things that just are no longer true or older ways of doing it. I expect as doctors and nurses and other care professionals, you're going to stay up on the patient care. Let me stay up on kind of the medical regulations and what's new and things coming along the lines in the power rehab market. So today we're going to go over what products are available, what the process looks like to get it, and really what does insurance require. And then we can discuss kind of some bigger problems, concerns, some average things we see in the industry. So first thing to do is talk about what is available in the space. One of the things I've noticed over the years of doing this is we get a lot of questions on what is the difference between a scooter and a power chair. And believe it or not, insurances like to be very particular. If we write down scooter and we actually mean power chair or something like that. I would say that on denials, that is probably the number one thing we see denials is we'll have scooter, 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 scooter. Then the last line, the doctor will prescribe a power chair. So the difference is basically a scooter is usually going to be for somebody who's fairly able-bodied. Insurance does only pay for the items for inside the home. So a scooter is usually kind of the first step we look at after a wheelchair, a cane, a walker, a roll aid, or something along those lines. The limitations of a scooter, though, it does have that big turning radius. But for somebody with a real basic condition like arthritis that doesn't necessarily need it every day, we want to keep them somewhat mobile, but may on certain days need it to perform their means of daily living, getting from the bathroom to the couch to the bedroom to prepare their meals, those type of things. That's what a scooter is great for. To qualify them for that, we do need to show the inability to use a cane, walker, other aid as a basic wheelchair, something along those lines. We would also want to take and state that the patient is able to safely operate a scooter. The scooters have a couple issues. One I always get is tilting. If somebody's very unsteady gait-wise or unsteady on their feet, a scooter might not be our best option. The back is just kind of really basic. The armrests are really basic. If they have rotator cuff issues or issues with their hands where they might not be able to squeeze the tiller or hold their arms out to use the tiller for a long period of time, those would also be reasons that they can't maybe safely use a scooter. A question I get continually that I just like to always clear up whenever I'm in front of the medical group that I can persuade or dissuade this kind of issue is everybody thinks four wheels on a scooter are much safer and stable than three wheels. That is actually incorrect. When you're using a scooter and you go to turn, just like a bicycle, motorcycle, it does dip a little bit. But when you have four wheels and you're doing that same thing because of the increase to the turning radius, the scooter will actually commonly only operate on two or three wheels, where a slight shift in the patient's weight can cause the scooter to easily tip over. So just one of the things I always like to tell the doctors, nurses. Also, the turning radiuses on a four-wheel scooter are almost impossible to get in a house, especially if, say, we're in Honolulu in a tight apartment. There's no way a four-wheel scooter is going to work, but a three-wheel scooter will almost always work. The other piece I like to tell everybody about four-wheel scooters, for some reason, even though in my opinion it is a worse piece of equipment, insurance charges or insurance is allowable really only pays for a three-wheel. The four-wheel scooters cost a couple $100 more. I don't know why. There is some extra suspension components in that, but I don't know what drives the price up that much. But they just really don't work with insurance too well. Three wheels are always a great option, and scooters kind of your basic start. Next item I kind of want to talk about is a basic power wheelchair. Basic power wheelchair, and by the way, all these are covered by insurance if your patient meets qualifications. One of the conversations I've had with a lot of doctors, nurses, PTs, OTs on island is that they can never seem to get these covered, or they're not coverable. There's some bad information that seems like it's been, handed out and around over the years, and I get it. There's multiple steps to do these, and they kind of go with a backwards process of everything else we prescribe. And we're going to get to that in a little bit, but I just want to really hammer home the point that today we are dispensing 4 power wheelchairs and 2 scooters through insurance. So they are definitely able to be covered. Basic power wheelchair is something like what we're seeing on screen right here. It is going to usually have a seat like this, which is called a captain's seat, or if we have some skin breakdown, we can get what's called a solid seat pan, which would be a flat piece of metal, and then a fancier or better cushion to go on top of it that can do some positioning needs, very basic positioning, or some skin protection. Normally with a power wheelchair like this, we're going to see a little bit more of the impairments in movement. For instance, an amputee. We're never going to really see an amputee walking too often, so this is usually a little bit more appropriate than a scooter for them. Somebody who's in multiple rotator cuff surgeries where they can't physically hold their arms out for a long time period to hold on to that tiller, or even arthritis in the shoulder, arms, where they can't propel a wheelchair, can't really use that tiller too well. Also, if your patient's going to be using it for a much longer extended period of time, This is usually a much better option for them as it gives them a much better, safer, solid seat. The big difference is it doesn't come apart as easily. There is kind of a stopgap option that is very new in the works that we've been testing out, that basically takes the best parts of a scooter and the best parts of this chair and puts them together. I'm going to refrain from saying too much about that right now because we've got only like 3 of them in the community, and we're kind of trying to see how they still kind of work in reality. If somebody has limited use of their arms, hands, anything like that, there's many specialty joysticks and specialty devices I can hook on one of these basic joysticks to allow for your patient to still have use. Last week I did one where there was a gentleman, basically the only way he could drive it was kind of by smacking the joystick. And the problem with having a small joystick is he's just unable to kind of smack it to drive it. So the solution there was I got him a joystick that was probably about 8 to 10 inches long. And therefore, when he smacks it, his hand makes contact, can stay on the joystick. He can then release when needed, and it works great. With something like a scooter, there's no modifications really at all that can be made. With this type of device, we can still take and do some more basic modifications there where we can put on stump supports, additional limb supports. But we're still kind of, our hands are tied until we get into the next category. These are great for indoor use. Insurance only pays for indoor use. One thing I would like to tell all of our doctors to do is I have had some amazing, there's a doctor years past that wrote me about a 10-page letter discussing the patient's mental health and how being able to see the grandson play baseball. And I felt terrible because I could not submit it to insurance. The first word on the paper was going outside to see grandson play baseball, which immediately, when insurance sees that, they immediately say no. Now, the other 5 pages I had that discussed how the patient was going to be able now to get from the bedroom to the bathroom to the kitchen, awesome. Great to have, 100% justified that need. Insurance is only looking for it. Now, once you have it, if you go outside, it's perfectly fine. The equipment is designed to still handle it, but insurance truly only qualifies for people for in-home use. And we always want to stress that because my own grandfather was zipping around the community everywhere he could possibly go on his for decades. And everybody that would see him, he would tell them how he can go up hills and do this and do that. And he could. He also purchased his scooter cash and could walk perfectly fine and just like to get a little lazy. So there's this common misconception in the community with what they see people doing, not understanding that they might have bought it on their own or how that works. But if you want it covered through insurance, it has to be technically for in-home use. We can't take anything outside of the home into that that suggestion. All right. So then the next group up would be called a Group 2 single power mobility device. Here I have the Jazzy Air, which is a newer device. There is many different kind of options of what single power would mean. Most of the time, what we're looking at there is a tilt feature or a recline feature. Tilt we'll commonly see to shift weight, help with catheterization. Recline we'll see kind of for those same things. Just really depends on the doctor, the OT, the PT, and exactly what needs they wanted to do. Sometimes we'll also see a power leg rest where the legs can come up or down to help a patient with severe swelling in the legs, edema, those type of things where they might not need the back to recline, they might not need the seat to recline, or they might only need one power option. The common one we're now seeing a lot of requests for is the one I pictured here, which has a seat elevator. I hopefully will be able to start sharing with people very soon what the qualifications for a seat elevator are. Congress passed seat elevation about 18 months ago and told us that we will have parameters for it within 3 years. And we still have not really seen parameters of what qualifies for a seat elevator, or for that matter, what the reimbursement structure is. We've been playing them by, each one at a time here through the insurances locally. Luckily, HMSA has been doing awesome with approving those as long as we've had justification, even though there's not really a justification. I've just been basically telling everybody, let's write a narrative, let's see what they say. If there's reasons that you as a physician feel that they need it, roughly most of our insurance have been very lenient on that path. Group 2 single power will also kind of see sometimes just for our heavy duty users that need a much higher weight capacity on a chair. Previous two items don't require an ATP or assisted technologies professional to be involved. This is where we start needing that ATP to be involved. What they do is they actually specifically design the chair with the therapist, the doctor's recommendations to make it fit all those needs. Now we start getting into the fun ones. So this is a group 3 power mobility device. What this means is it basically meets all the classifications of a group 1. Normally we're going to see this for a client who has some neurological, congenital, skeletal, or myopathy diagnoses. There's a ton of other diagnoses that qualify. And if you think your patient needs something much, much more involved than the basic ones, I always say contact us. Contact one of the dealers on island. Right now on Oahu, it's us, National Seating. There's supposedly a third, but I am really not sure who it is. But get us involved with the process early. What I'd hate to do, and what I always hate to do, is we get 6 months down the road where everybody's working on a basic scooter for somebody, and then we find out, hey, this patient has multiple pressure sores, has catheterization, needs edema, so we need to have them tilted in a full recline for a portion of the day, so that the fluids can drain out of the legs. It's terrible when we get down the road, or I had one a couple months ago. We delivered a scooter, and in the process of delivering, my guys went in, and my basic drivers are pretty good at delivering scooters. And they show the tourist all day, every day, how to do them and things. But when they went to show this lady, and they're going, Mike, she's a Hoyer lift patient. She's been bedridden for 5 years. We can't put her in this scooter. It's not safe. And then that's when I contacted the physician. This physician goes, well, yeah, I wanted one of the scooters with the joysticks and the headrest. And he starts describing the chest harness that he wanted to me. And I go, but you wrote a prescription for a scooter. And he goes, oh, yeah, that's probably called something different. So one of the things, though, that I mentioned earlier, kind of what I specialize in here, I originally was a custom car mechanic. And most of my family was in wheelchairs, unfortunately. I had an accident myself that put me in a wheelchair for 3 months. And that's how I kind of got into this industry. At that point, there was no need for me to customize or race cars while I was in a wheelchair. But when I got out of it, the guys who had provided my wheelchair offered me a job customizing equipment. So my specific specialty is alternative drive controls. With this type of chair, it allows for those alternative drive controls, whether or not they're super easy, where I might just use a smaller joystick. Somebody who has very limited hand control, I might use a tiny, tiny joystick. With someone with Parkinson's with a heavy tremor, I might use a joystick that's larger that has a tremor dampening feature in it, where when they do have a shake, the joystick doesn't drive, the chair doesn't drive completely out of control. There's other systems that we're probably all a little bit more familiar with, or probably have seen in the past, called a head array, where there'd be a set of switches on the patient's head. Those sets of switches we can program, if they have good net control, over how to drive with the switches. Head array I like a lot. There's another system that's a little bit older called a sip and puff, where the patient would have a set of straws in their mouth, and depending on how they interface with the straws, we can set them up all kinds of different ways. Normally, it's blowing out to drive forward or backwards, sucking in to drive the opposite way, and then some type of puff pattern to turn the chair. Works great. It's a very good older system, but I am really excited about the new systems coming out. This year, this year's in 25, I have had the opportunity to do 2 Munevo systems, which are basically Google Glass. They bought a lot of the patents Google Glass came out with. It's a set of eyeglasses you wear, and it has an eyeball tracking software that allows the chair to go wherever your eyeball goes. I will tell you, they are a nightmare for me to set up, but they're extremely rewarding once we get them into the patient's hands. There's a few other older versions of that we've also done. Tolt was a system that was out a few years ago. There's a few Tolt systems on the island in operation right now. Though used an iPad kind of device that sat in front. It was a really specialized Google Chromebook, but then it had integrations from other manufacturers in it also. It was a great device. The only problem we had with that one is most of our geriatric community was not computer savvy enough to do it. I have like a 24-year-old gamer who was barely computer savvy enough to do it. That works for me. Where the new program, the Menuvo, is really user friendly. It's super user friendly device in comparison to the other ones. I'm going to take and talk a little bit about the process now of getting a chair or what the easiest ways to do them are. Basic power device, a scooter, one of those basic chairs. This is really easy and can actually most of the time be done in the physician's office right then and there. The patient's going to come in and talk to you. The physician's going to document on the chart note from that visit. Patient struggles with severe arthritis, cannot get from the couch to the kitchen, kitchen to the bathroom, etc. I would like to request a scooter as they have had rotator cuff issues along with the arthritis where they can't propel the wheels of the wheelchair anymore. We always want to take and tell insurance that why they can't use a cane, a walker, or a wheelchair very clearly in those write-ups. I many times have been asked why a quadriplegic or a paraplegic cannot walk by insurance. My favorite is when they send me that patient is a double amputee, but why can they not walk? That is my favorite denial ever to receive. I receive it all the time. I see a couple people laughing about that one. But the more clear picture, we just have to really list it out. And remember, half the time we're dealing with an AI that is looking through that stuff that is just looking for keywords. So the more we can just hit those nails on the head, the further we get along with it. After you document the need in the chart note, send it over to the equipment provider. What they're going to do, if it's us or somebody else, we're going to take your information, look through it all. We're going to then fax you back a CMN, LMN to sign off on. Or if there's a digital way of doing it, I know some people use like a digital system. We're hopefully all getting away from faxes soon. After that, a company like us, DME provider, is going to come in and do a home assessment. It really depends there. Sometimes we do that at actual time of delivery. Most of the apartment buildings in Honolulu, I know that scooters will work. I know that there's one or two that they will not work. Most of the time we can do that at time of delivery, and that speeds the process up. But if insurance does have a pre-authorization process, we would do a home assessment, usually the day after getting your paperwork. We'd schedule it in there, we do the home assessment, and then submit your paperwork, the home assessment, all for pre-authorization. On the basic items, though, well, luckily, a lot less of them are needing pre-authorizations than there used to be. At that time, we normally get the approval from insurance. We order the items delivered. On the basic stuff for us, for instance, I can tell you I have like 15 scooters on order. I have another 15 that are in the process of shipping to me. I always keep like a rotation on that basic stuff as it's not super specialized. I think, and I can tell you, I know my competitor, as far as the more complex stuff, they do the same exact thing as we do on that. Now, if it's a complex device, this is where it seems to throw the process off a little bit more, is when we do need those higher end devices. Reason being, it's super easy to do the scooters, the wheelchairs, but with this one, we have a couple extra steps. So patients still going to come in and see you. They're going to discuss their need. And what you would want to do at that time is I'd still document that in the chart note, but there's no reason to go overboard with really trying to justify it at that time. The easy thing to do is write a prescription for a seating and mobility evaluation, and then send it to a DME provider you're going to work with, whether it's us or one of the other ones on island. What we're going to do then is we're going to kind of pick it up and take it from there. It takes the burden off of you as the physician, takes the burden off of your office. And I kind of look at it as, the more we can get out of there, we know the intricacies of the laws, the regulations, the little things that change continually on our side. We stay up on it so you don't have to. And we kind of take that burden off of your staff. First thing there that we normally are going to do is my company, my position that works that is called the CRC. The CRC is going to call the patient and say, hey, is there an OT or a PT you already work with? If not, they're going to say, hey, I have a list of suggestions. You can use whoever you'd like. But, these are the ones we work with. And I think 99% of patients go, book me in whoever you can get me in with the fastest that takes my insurance. So in that case, my CRC takes and works with the PT and the patient gets them scheduled. Normally what we take and do then is have one of my technicians, myself, my ATP, one of us goes out and does a home assessment, unless we're going to do that PT appointment at the home. If we're going to do it at the home, we'd obviously do it at that time. But the PT OT appointment is specifically done for the seating and mobility evaluation. On island here, I know StayFit really likes to do them on Oahu. We've been doing a ton with them. Obviously, Rehab Hospital does kind of all their own stuff there. We have a couple independent PTs. If there's anybody that knows PTs, though, that are willing to do these, please get them my information. I have a massive backlog on patients trying to get into CPTs. That I would, if anybody has any help there, I would love the assistance. What I do then is I send my ATP out to that appointment. He's going to really able to discuss the needs. As the OT and the PT goes through, they have a couple forms that they're going to go through on their end, an evaluation form that they work with. He's going to be able to translate what those needs are to what can fix those needs, and then have those conversations of good, better, best, kind of looking at those outcomes. What is realistic? If we do this, what does this subtract from this? And then they work as a group during that appointment to put something together. At that point, my guy comes back. We do a bunch of paperwork on our side. And then the face-to-face appointment is conducted back again by you, the physician. So that's an appointment that is kind of specific towards the chair normally. If anybody's been in one, I usually attend them all that I can, or Tim, my ATP, does. I have 2 or 3 other people here that I have trained really to do them if one of us is not available. But what we do at that time, or at least my company, and I know once again my competitor does the same thing. I know their protocol on it pretty well. We take and come in, we bring you that PT form because we need to sign off that you've read the PT or the OT evaluation and you're in agreement. We're going to bring you an LMN to sign off on. And then what we're able to do is, because we've done that appointment by the OT and the PT, is where we're able to usually take the LCDs from Medicare, Medicaid, come up with kind of the statement that they're looking at and provide it to you as the physician. Now, I can't tell you to use my statement, but you are welcome to use my statement. It's basically, I'm just providing an exact example that works. And you can do whatever you like with that statement. Everybody usually laughs at me and goes, I'm obviously copying it, but I've had 1 or 2 doctors over the years that have said, no, I'm not, I don't like that statement because this. I go, well, that's fine. I'm just basing it off of the information I have. That doesn't mean that I would assume most times as a physician, you do have additional information. The one thing I always tell everybody though in that statement, please do not put in if they are using it outside the home, because that is the giant red stamp of denial on there. Now, where that does get a little tricky, and I have seen it a little bit I was Kauai's manager initially, but I saw this a lot more often on the mainland, especially in some of the extremely rural areas I worked in. The house and the home are different. It's for in-home use, not necessarily in-house use. Where this got really tricky was I was in Ohio, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. West Virginia, I'd run into a lot of outhouses that were still in use. That pathway of sidewalk leading up to the outhouse is still part of the home. If there's a second building, same thing, West Virginia, I'd encounter this a lot, where there was bunk houses where people slept, and then grandma's house was where the kitchen was, up in front, and everybody cooked and did everything in there. All of those structures on the property were part of the home. So just something to keep in mind as we go through it. I usually, in that case, would not state that they have to go outside to go to the bathroom. I try and stay away from that magic word of outside, but I just really like to stress it. The better picture we can paint for insurance on why the need's there, the more likely insurance is to allow for it. After we get that paperwork from the physician, we're going to submit it for authorization. Most of these larger devices do have to go for insurance pre-authorization. Then we're going to order the equipment. this, and then we're going to deliver it. Normally, what I do like to tell everybody is from when you first see the patient and fax the paperwork to me to delivery, we can normally do the turnaround in 90 days. The biggest holdup I'm having currently on island, as I said before, was getting PTs and OTs that are able to do the evals right now. But when everything's working smooth, we're usually able to deliver within 90 days. If I'm not, if I do not have it on order at day 70, my boss is calling me. It's on a giant list that I get yelled at about every Monday of what's going on with these orders and why have they stalled. So 90 days is a really realistic timetable. I know in the past a lot of people were saying that I've heard nightmares where they take a year, 2 years, 3 years to get items. Otherwise, insurance requirements for the basic chairs, they just basically need a chart note. We need to discuss why the need for the device is tied to the MRDLs, reasons why a less expensive item won't work. I'm always very clear with why it won't work. And then documentation. And it can be as easy as patient exhibits the ability to safely use item inside the home, and they're willing to do so. That knocks out two of those requirements in a single sentence. And then we just want to document how it will improve their daily living. And then current height and weight. Current height and weight is the one that we are missing a lot of times. And it can make a huge difference especially when we're looking at somebody at about 260 pounds up to, and up. That's where it gets really tricky with weight limits of the equipment and if I'm allowed to upgrade them or not. Ideally, when they're at the higher end of a piece of equipment, I always want to look and see if they're within 20% of the next item. Because if I can get them a better piece of equipment, a more heavy duty piece of equipment, we're going to have a lot less issues with batteries going bad, breakdowns on motors, things going forward. If it is a complex item, we would need a chart note again. Same things out of the chart note. We do need that signed LMN, which is the same. Two additional things, though, we would have to have signed at that time is the PT evaluation and then this 7-element order. I did put the 7-element order up here because I just wanted to let everybody see it. One of the big problems I have is insurance actually wants you to handwrite this order. I have no idea what Medicare, Medicaid came up with this, and they expect it to be handwritten most of the time, which I don't know why you'd ask doctors to do that or medical people in general, because nobody can read any of our handwriting. Whenever I bring this in, I usually go through it with you. I have the information right there on the LMN for you to fill in the couple questions. So I make it super easy. Same thing with documentation. If I'm coming in to see you myself, I'm going to bring you basically the paragraph you're looking for and say, hey, here's the paragraph. You can do whatever you want with it. You can kick me out of here. You can have me sit here and go through it with you. Whatever you'd like to do. It's obviously between you and your patient there, but I'm just there to help. Otherwise, some of the biggest problems, common errors I see going through this, dates not lining up properly. That's a big one I have where a lot of times the physician, and I get it, I especially get everything from the physician standpoint, but I also have to figure it out through insurances. Dates not lining up properly. I'll get a lot of times where a physician will take and say, hey, I saw them about this power chair. They then set them to go see the PT, see everything else, and they try and send into the insurance that initial visit, that initial office visit. Well, then what insurance goes is, how did you recommend the power chair before you sent the patient to get recommendations for the power chair? So having the dates line up properly, I usually say, hey, we want to, after we're done with the PT and OT, get all the signatures on one day, then we have no problems at all. That's why when I'm doing them and my competitors are doing them, we happily come out. We hand you the piece of paper, we get the signature, and it's all set. Saves us all confusion, saves our staffs from arguing and trying to figure it all out, and us feeling like we've all signed off on the same piece of paper 10 times. The next problem I have is too little or too much information. As I discussed a little earlier, I said that I had that doctor. He wrote the guy 10 pages on how his mental health would improve by seeing his grandson play baseball. I agreed with every bit of it, and I knew the guy needed a wheelchair, or in his case, it was a scooter. All that we really needed to do was say the patient had severe arthritis, could no longer propel his manual wheelchair, and he was a double amputee. It was that easy. We gave them way too much information, and we gave them the ability to find something. Because I'll tell you what, our insurance companies, as we all know, are trying to find ways to say no. So if we don't give them the way to say no, they're not able to. Other one there, ruling out a less expensive piece of equipment. They will continually ask me why a double amputee cannot walk. We just have to say patient is a double amputee, cannot, due to unsteady gait, cannot use a prosthetic, and therefore needs a power device. The biggest other problems we deal with that I know I've heard some of this from the physicians, but normally you don't hear a lot of this, is the patients get real confused on when we're calling a scooter, a power chair, a wheelchair. To them, it's all the same thing. And when we discuss it with them, we try our best to paint the picture. But if somebody else told them something different and they just get this preconceived notion, so I always tell everybody, hey, if you know the right term, great. If not, don't give them too many terms where you're going to confuse the patient in the end. Um, or Google is our best friend there if they're trying to, ask a question. You have 2 seconds to pull it up on Google. Go, are you looking at the scooter that you drive with the tiller like a bicycle or motorcycle, or the power chair where you're driving it with the joystick? Because I get tons of just questions, comments, things after the fact from our patients all the time, where they think they're getting one thing. They actually, most of the time, it's when they get a better piece of equipment that they get confused on why. And then the other problem that we have is missing our old demographics. Um, Whenever you're faxing over kind of that basic information, if you have updated height and weight, updated diagnosis codes, the more information you can provide to us off the bat, the better off it is. I see this a lot of times in facility settings. There's a facility I used to work with really close on Kauai where docs in the facility sees all the patients every day. They know that so and so may have this, may not have this. Their appointment technically to really see doctor is until next week, so we didn't write it down. But then it's never somehow ended up in the chart notes that hey, this existed, and we just end up with problems there. The other problem that I have with old demographics is height and weight. That can be huge, especially with somebody who's newly disabled. Their weight can sometimes skyrocket within that first few months of just not burning those additional calories. So always having that stuff up to date as possible is just super important. The other thing I will tell you is I do know one or two of the insurance companies now are linked to Epic, I think, and able to, I don't know exactly how it worked, but the one insurance company denied a bunch of wheelchairs a few months ago because they had access to other parts of the documentation that none of us had. And apparently the patient had been walking in a PT 6 months previous. Well, what was never listed then, or I don't exactly know how it all happened. We're still trying to figure this one out. But they were trying to get the patient up and walking. Patient had suffered an additional stroke. And there's no way the patient's ever going to walk again. But we were fighting this denial, and they were pulling out old pages of a PT report from 6 months previous. So I am not sure what's going on with that insurance wise. That is the new scary thing we're dealing with. As AI has kind of helped make the approval process go much smoother. Now there's some new things going on that we're not exactly sure where those denials are coming from. But I'd like to, at this point, kind of open up the floor for questions, concerns, anything like that.
Well, thanks, Mike. This is a very interesting, I'm sure, very interesting dive into these much needed pieces of equipment, but also a lot of the background and sort of like the pitfalls in getting stuff approved. And I think that's probably where a lot of us interface with this stuff is trying to advocate for our patients to get them what they need. So definitely appreciate all of that. Really useful information. Let's start. We can open it up and to the panel and check in with Sarah and think, any thoughts or questions from the social work. side of
Yeah,
things.
from a social work perspective, and I'm certainly like a big advocate for all of our patients to be is, independent as possible and to live within the least restrictive type of environment. But just a couple of thoughts and questions because I wonder how you might handle a situation for patients where it would be contraindicated that they want to have this power wheelchair or power device, but they have really bad glaucoma and they have problems with their hand dexterity, and they also are having hearing loss. So, but I really want this because my friend, my neighbor, they were able to get a powered vehicle. So I could use a wheelchair, I could use other types of devices, but that's one thing I wanted to ask. And then for those same people that they don't necessarily agree with the physician, may want to pay pay privately, pay for the equipment, even though it's again not appropriate. How do you handle that? And I guess what is the cost for these?
Sure. So the first piece there with your so I've actually done a few of them for patients that are completely blind. There's one of them you will see in Waikiki quite often where the guy taps with a cane and he uses the cane tap still to drive it. Um, there's a couple devices that are in the works that aren't insurance approved yet that are actually going to fix some of those problems. One of them is depending on what you don't have sensory left is what we can use to adapt it. There's one called Braze. There's another one called Lucy. They're, they're all still very rudimentary, and I don't know that I would say I have a solution yet today. I would honestly say though that with the speed that those are working, I probably will have a solution in 6 months. They I have been saying that though with one of those systems for about 6 years. It's just it doesn't ever test the way it's supposed to. So that
Yes.
that there is that difficult scenario. I always say though that's where we take the OT, the PT, the ATP, get them, or at least the OT or the PT, get them in the room with the ATP, get them with the patient, get a piece of equipment in there, and have them do hands on and see what we can do, see what our limitations are actually going to be, and then see what our realistic expectations are. Is this person trying to go down a hallway that they're going to go down every way, that they're already counting their steps to go down the hall? Well, maybe the power chair does work then. Are is it a completely different scenario though? There's many times where we take and say no. Um,
Yeah,
the
I've been
other one,
nearly run over a few times. There was one fellow in the hospital, and that was his goal is to see who he could knock down. I mean, it was like
Mhm.
Lucas, it was kind of crazy.
I have a patient with behavioral issues that was the exact issue, and that goes into your next question there. Of we try to work with the care team to provide what the patient wants. That being said, they can still go around us and go to Amazon or somewhere online to get it. And as a business, I'd rather them get it where they're going to get it on island where they have service and other things where they're not going to be taking it apart. So it just becomes there where I always respect the wishes of the care team. And usually that's where I'll call and go, hey, they're going to buy this on Amazon and they're going to buy the least safe one out there. If I sell them this one, or how mad are you going to be at me, Doc? How bad is this going to be if we get them one that's actually somewhat appropriate? And it just depends there on the individual situation. Normally, when we say no, they don't even call us back. They go directly to the internet because I'll tell you, there's a company that brings in these things out of Florida. Amazon's got the same chair I sell for $4,000 roughly. They're selling it on this one website for about $2,000. They're not shipping it. It doesn't come with the batteries. By the time the patient gets it, it costs more. It's a scam, but I see patients get roped into that all the time. So I'll at least sometimes steer them like, hey, I'm not going to provide this for you, but it's not safe. But at least go buy it from this guy because he's not going to rip you off. And there's but other times where, yeah, I kind of flat out refuse as the care team. I know I saw a couple questions clicking in too. Um, Someone with really long legs, yes, definitely we can do. Any of the chairs, for the most part, we can customize. One of the things that I do really like about the custom mobility stuff is I'm six, well, I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I'm not truly 6 foot, but everything that is for somebody in 6 foot, I've noticed for the most part is actually for about people that are 5'10" in the medical space. And the bariatric stuff does not get taller for the most part. It just gets wider. So that stuff doesn't help either. What's cool about most of this stuff is it's completely customizable. There's a chair downstairs right now. The guy's about 7 foot. I think he's about 500 pounds, former football player. Um, he's got a chair downstairs, fits him perfect. Knees right at 90 degrees. We have the ability to set all of that. On a basic scooter, not all the time. Sometimes that's where we move up to a higher level power chair for that exact reason altogether. I also saw the question, do any climb stairs? I'm going to say no, but then I'm going to give you the asterisk. There is one that you are going to see online, and there is a very big influencer who has been promoting that one a lot in the disabled space. I would tell anybody who has seen her videos to check out her husband's YouTube channel, where he shows the behind the scenes taping of her videos. There is one that Toyota designed decades ago. They sold it to Dodge. Mercedes then bought it from them. Every single car company has kicked this around, realizing that if they could make a wheelchair that goes upstairs, they'd be printing money. Currently, it's back to Toyota, and it is the most unsafe thing ever. It has an additional leg that comes up the back that then does this counter rotation to climb stairs. If your stairs are wood, in every single stair is like put together with a digital level in a way that no human could do. The thing works perfect. If they're the gentleman and the influencer who has the video with it is, they're somewhere in Los Angeles trying to go up a staircase and there's leaves on it. The chair cannot communicate to figure out because the leaves are moving in the wind. And she actually trips backwards and rolls down the stairs in the chair. Luckily, the husband and like the cameraman are able to right her, but that's why I tell everybody, don't believe necessarily everything you see online with some of those things. Obviously, she was given a chair to go up a staircase to do a video on it and promote how good it is. And she does. And that's why I say, okay, watch her husband's one where he shows you the behind the scenes taping and kind of what really goes on. There's a bunch of ideas of ones that go upstairs. None of them do it safely. I do have a couple wheelchairs that go upstairs though now. I see a link here.
Oh, hey Mike, that's from me. You met me in person before for a patient. And we've had we have this other patient who, lives in a home that has one of those winding staircases, so like a outdoor stair lift would not be feasible, and they even considered putting an elevator in their home. But I found this, so they haven't bought it yet. But it's essentially like a hand truck to put a person in. I don't know how safe it is, but it is relatively cheap. So they're gonna think about it and get back to me.
What I will tell you, because this isn't the power, but
Right.
great bringing this one up. There is another version of this one that is an actual medical one that cost about $600 that we have used. We have a patient that has a private plane that flies in and out, and money was not an option. Money was whatever there. So they bought that one. It is not covered by insurance from any really means, but that one works awesome. The difference between this one and that one is it had like a wheel on the back that had multiple wheels on it. So that wheel then would roll to go up the stairs. This version I have seen, and I've actually used this one. This one works pretty good. So yeah, great suggestion, kind of that out of the box thing. Looks like there was another question about the warranty and coverage. Warranty on power chairs, scooters, all the mobility products for the most part. There's a manufacturer's warranty. The manufacturer's warranty, once that expires, insurance themselves would pick up on it and continue covering it from there. I cannot speak for everybody else on island. But any of our patients that gets anything from us, we do all of our own servicing here in house. I have service techs that's all that they do all day, every day. I have a company wide. I have 5 of them, so I have 2 on Oahu, 2 on Maui, 1 on Kauai right now. I then also have a team that I fly over to Big Island to service Big Island on a monthly basis. I manage then Molokai patients. I have some that are split between Maui and Oahu, where just depending on where doctors are, PTs, things like that, make it easy enough for the patients. I do know with the basic stuff with some of the other medical equipment companies on island that sell scooters and power chairs, they don't service them. So I don't want to bash competition there or anything, but we do. The other kind of ones that do but kind of my other 2 real competitors that do the heavier duty stuff, they all also service their own stuff. And I always try to, fix a problem or get the item working relatively as soon as possible, or get a loaner. That being said, insurance doesn't really provide me money for loaners or anything like that. So it's kind of just what's ever been donated that I can maintain, I have. Otherwise, I'll offer a manual wheelchair. Say they have a power chair, I'll try and find a manual wheelchair. I'm not going to leave them without something. We're a locally owned company, so we're always going to try and do our best there. Even when the coverage, the option doesn't exist through standard insurance.
Awesome. I really appreciate Mike Tom's, bringing up that device up the stairs, because I mean that's a cool thing. I've never even seen that before, and
there's
really
a
awesome.
bunch of new things like that are starting to trickle out. There's some really cool Hoyer lift system and patient lift systems too that are starting to come out. I think we're gonna about 10 years ago we saw a big kind of refocus of equipment. A couple of the main U.S. companies, I don't want to say exited the market, but shifted focuses. And a bunch of the European companies came in with their ideas. And we're about to see the same thing, I think, happen in another 2 to 3 years. So there's lots of cool stuff on the horizon.
Reese, anything to add?
Yeah, not exactly about the mobile units, but working at a pharmacy, we do get prescriptions from providers, sometimes for canes or bandages or braces, blood pressure machines, bathroom accessories. Do you happen to have a cheat sheet on what insurances do cover, and where we could send those prescriptions to, or help the provider, send it to the right place for the patients to receive?
Great question. I don't necessarily have a cheat sheet, but what I would say is if you can't figure it out, we normally always have a way of figuring out where they can get something like that. So when my staff gets a request that we can't serve, they have just a ton of different contacts depending on who it is and what island it is. Some of that I would love to. So Oahu we bought a few years ago, and Oahu I haven't rolled out everything I carry on Maui and Kauai to yet. Surprisingly, we're doing it backwards of every other company. But all those items you just listed, bandages normally go through wound care, and those normally are kind of the one that nobody has. On all the other islands besides Oahu, I have blood pressure monitors, I have bracing. Blood pressure I do actually have on Oahu now. I brought that in a couple months ago. Bracing is the difficult one. What has happened with bracing is Walmart's killed us as an industry. Walmart's selling a brace that their copay costs, their copay to get a good brace, the brace we want them in, for the most part. Most of the time, Walmart's selling an over-the-counter brace that's cheaper than their copay. Now, if it's something like a higher end brace, like Townsend makes knee braces that cost they're like $800 to $1,000. Something like that we do. We have a licensed fitters for Townsend knee braces on all 3 islands. So that when we have them come in, we measure them, then we have Townsend actually make the carbon fiber or fiberglass bracing. But the basic wrist braces that we used to all sell all the time, unfortunately, Walmart's selling a wrist brace that looks like it. Yes, it's missing the stays and all the things we want in it. When they come into my office and that brace costs $4, so insurance, the copay is $40, and they see it at Walmart for 15, even though it's missing the things, missing the person to fit it correctly, show them how to use it, all that stuff. The other thing that I will say along the lines of that is, so on Kauai, we've set up actually a lot of the hospitals to have closets in them where those items are there, and then the doctors have a one-page form they fill out, and they're able to dispense it right then and there. They fax the form into us. We get the form, we bill it through our system, and we bring out a new brace the next day. So it's always a system too. We're always open to expanding. Just the geographic, constraints of Kauai and time constraints, it made the most sense to do there. The hospitals there approached it, and it's been awesome for them. I will tell you though, the Cleveland Clinic hated that system. So when I worked for them, so every system, every hospital system and how your flow works, it may work, may not. So.
Hey Reese, when you do
Thank
get
you.
those orders, but most pharmacies are not processing that because it's often under a different, Medicare part or a different part of their plan. And so wouldn't you folks kind of kick it back to the ordering provider to say like, please send to, Mike and Gammy or somebody else anyway?
Yeah, so that's what we typically do is we send it back to the doctor, but then sometimes they ask, oh, who should I send it to? Do you know a place that would fill it?
Oh, I see.
And then it would help both sides, if we just had a good
List of
consistent place
like
to refer them
vendors
to.
that handle DME. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like this is
Uh,
for this brace. Oh, this place would probably do it, or based on the insurance, I would, try this place versus, I'm not sure, maybe, your office might have a list of places to try to send it.
I mean, for sure, our office does. Mike knows our office very well. We order DME all the time for our base patients. So, yeah, we can. I don't know if we have an existing list. I think our medical assistants are just that savvy and have been with us. One of ours just made 15 years here, which we're very, happy that she's been with our program for that long. But anyway, we'll see. We can drum up something, and I'll get in touch with you. Mike, I did want
Yeah,
to ask, in the process of ordering and having a therapy eval, what if the patient's concurrently getting PT or OT through a home health agency?
sure. So,
Like maybe they're doing outpatient.
um, I will tell you that that's actually how I built probably half my contacts in this industry, is by calling those PTs and those OTs, and they like immediately when I tell them what I need them to do, they're like, no way. And I'm like, well, if I come out and walk you through it, are you willing to do it? So a lot of times they're going, yeah, we'll take a shot. The other positive there is being that it's billed as a completely separate service, we can see an outside PT or OT. Kauai, for instance, I have one therapy company on Kauai that is not willing to do those whatsoever. And I understand it. They're swamped. They're using traveling OT PTs. They don't have the time. But I have three uh, physical therapy companies on Kauai who basically are like, send me all of them that you have. And I've met all three of those therapists by meeting them in the field with a patient that they currently were with. Where after they did that first one, they go, "Oh, this is nothing. Like I'll take any of these that you ever want to send me. It's the easiest hour I can ever bill for because they're coming in. I'm seeing them. I actually think sometimes where that's, if you have somebody who's super complex and we can stick with their OT or PT they're already working with, amazing. Sometimes though, when we actually go and see that third party OT or PT and I get their recommendations and then go back, because if they work with somebody, I obviously want their opinion too. And go, hey, this is what my outside person I work with on a regular basis recommended. Do you have any problems with this? And most of the time, it just gives us that better, just that better outcome when we can all kind of work together round table a little bit. But it doesn't affect their OT or PT because it's billed as kind of a completely separate thing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate those are super awesome, very specific and important questions. So we wanted to wrap up today. We are at 1:00, and I have a kupuna waiting for me, and as I'm sure many of us do. So, but thanks, Mike, for being here with us, sharing this information. Are folks going to be able to get the slides from today? Is one
Yes.
question.
John,
You
the
willing
IT,
to share, Mike? And
he will.
okay, awesome.
Yep.
So we can help folks access that. And thanks everyone for joining us. We will hope to see you around next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Mike.
having
Thanks,
me.
everyone.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Aloha.
Thank you very much, Sarah.